First, I was gonna say, if you want to introduce yourself to those at SGF, just kind of if you want to go ahead and bring up To Die For documentary or just anything, just give a brief introduction.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so I'm Whitney Cawood. So I am one of the directors for To Die For the documentary. My husband and I have kind of tackled this project. Without going too much into our story, we have a child that has a neurologic reaction to synthetic dyes. And so from that experience, it was really eye-opening to see how just wild his transformation was once he had synthetic dyes, and just a really, really small amount of dyes, like maybe through his medication or something. So we were pretty shocked, and I wanted to figure out why this was happening. So I started to devour podcasts and research articles and just anything that I could find to just give me some information about what was going on. And I was pretty overwhelmed, and I had lots of questions. So I wanted to reach out directly to researchers and just leading experts in the field. And I thought, since we have the ability, why don't we just record it? So I asked Brandon if he would document our journey, and there was a lot of convincing there, but ultimately he agreed. So we've flown all over the US and even all the way to London to interview researchers and even impacted families. So that's where we are.
Oh, no, and it is so crazy. I know I first came across y'all when we were looking for videographers for our gala, and then y'all brought this up, and I was just like, okay, hold on, this entire meeting just took a different direction. I want to hear more about this now, because dyes are everywhere, and it's been years and years and years of just kind of having to unlearn a lot of things and just dive into, like, it's scary, and I'm sure y'all experienced that amongst several other emotions. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask is kind of, you addressed a little bit of this in your introduction, but if you wanted to expound upon any of it, can you tell us more about what inspired you to create the documentary To Die For, and how your personal journey with your child's sensitivity to synthetic dyes influenced this decision, which you did address a lot of that. If there's anything though that you can think to add, if not, we can move on.
For sure. I mean, honestly, like, this is my favorite thing to talk about. I could spend the entire interview talking about this. So we have a super, super sweet son. He's 6. We also have a daughter. She's 3. Actually, he turned 6 in 9 days. I'm aging him up. So he's about to turn 6. So whenever he was starting, like even from 1 to 3, we were having a lot of issues at church. He did a mother's morning out, which is like a 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock, like daycare, just local to us. So we drop him off 2 days a week and then pick him up. He's having a lot of issues there. And the issues that we were, or the reports that we were getting, were concerning because of the frequency and also the intensity of them. So he was struggling with impulsivity, aggression. He was biting and hitting, which a lot of that, you hear that and you're like, okay, that sounds normal. But it was every day, and it was several times a day. And several times a week, I was having to pick him up from school early. And ultimately, we ended up trying behavior therapy. We consulted doctors, and, the doctors really just said, hold on, wait until he's 6. If things don't improve, then we will move forward with a diagnosis. And with his school, it was a little bit more urgent, because they had told us, unless we started an RTI, which an RTI is a plan that follows them through 12th grade, and he was 3 at the time, we no longer had a spot. So it was obviously an issue. We were kicked out of school. But I say all that to say, like, he was also, even along the way, like, a very sweet boy, and all his teachers noted he was very smart. And he didn't seem to have any attention issues. It was just like this overwhelm and overstimulation and like aggression. So that culminated into us obviously getting kicked out of school, which was a big motivator to try to figure something out. So I searched foods that can cause behavior problems, and I came across an article that suggested eliminating wheat, dairy, and synthetic dyes. And so I really honestly thought the wheat and dairy would have more to do with his behavior issues, or maybe like push the needle a little bit more since he was consuming so much of that. But we eliminated all of those for 30 days. And within 48 hours, he went from hitting us several times a day to like maybe once, he might have hit us once that month. And so like literally eliminating the dyes took away 98% of the issues. And the other 2%, he could slow down enough for us to talk to him. And so like it was an immediate noticeable reaction. We were both like, that's so weird. So rewind just a little bit. He was having all those issues in schools, but the reason why we weren't really eager to go to the next step and try to find a diagnosis is that he was not like that all the time. And it wasn't like good days or bad days. Some days it was really bad, and other days he was like a different child. And like you can't turn off ADHD and you can't turn off any other diagnosis. It just didn't seem to fit. Yeah. So we eliminated it for 30 days, and then we reintroduced the wheat and we saw no effect. We introduced the dairy and we saw no effect. And when we reintroduced the dyes, within just like a few minutes, 15, 20 minutes, he was hitting, screaming, fits. It was the same behavior that we had had before, just like it came back so quickly. But I think what is the most shocking part about our story is that he was only consuming the dyes daily through his allergy medicine. So like we weren't doing the colorful cereals, we weren't doing the colorful candies. Like he would go to a party and obviously consume those, or if there was a treat that was given at school. But like in our home, that wasn't something we regularly did. But he had chronic ear infections, so he was on an antibiotic 8 times that year, which is obviously bright red. Yeah. And the doctor said when he had a runny nose, give him Benadryl to dry up, any of the liquid, so that he didn't set in, an ear infection didn't set in. So he was getting a daily allergy, and then anytime he had a runny nose, he was getting Benadryl. So all I had to do was to remove those, and we did find dyes in like marshmallows and things like that you wouldn't expect. But we were pretty surprised when we went through our cabinets. We didn't have a whole lot of dyed foods. So I think that is equally as shocking, that you can have a relatively clean diet, but then dyes were consuming his days just because he was consuming just such a small amount. So that was really shocking to us. Fast forward, he's had public school pre-K, kindergarten, he's going into 1st grade. I mean, like he's as close to perfect as a little boy can get. Like, I mean, he's a boy. He's a silly boy, obviously. But he's not hit a single person. He hasn't had a meltdown. He's not doing the fits. And this is not just maturity. Like, this is an almost overnight change. Yeah. And so we don't have an RTI. He does very well in school academically. And so to go from when he was 3, I had decided I was probably going to have to homeschool, honestly, for him and for other students. Yeah. And so to go from that to like he's doing so well, it honestly felt like we had a golden ticket, and we knew that this could help thousands of people, if not millions. We knew that it could. And his case is extreme. Most children don't have that dramatic of a behavior shift, but there are kids that do. And even that small behavior shift, parents would do anything to help their children. Oh, yeah. So even if it's just a small, taking the edge off, taking the aggression away, like you would do anything to help your kids. Yeah. So we kind of felt, my husband being a videographer, we kind of felt guilty is not the word, but like empowered in that we can help people. We know that this can help people. So that's why we decided to document our journey. And we decided also to put our story and our faces in the film, which is something I did not want to do. Yeah. Honestly, I would have loved to have been disconnected, but that's very inauthentic. Yeah. I want to share our story. I want to share, it would not be fair to put other people's lives out there and not put our lives out there. But that's
your testimony out there, using your experience to help others. No, I love that. And I'm so happy that it has worked out that way for y'all. I hate, obviously, everything that you and your husband and your child had to go through to get to this point, but it has apparently uncovered a lot of scary things, but a lot of great things to help people. I know I see your newsletter a lot for just safe swaps, even. So like you said, anywhere you can start to eliminate, just look for, okay, what can I take away or at least supplement with something else that's safer. So let's see here. I was going to ask, what were some of the challenges that you have faced while filming, producing the documentary, how you've overcome them?
So I think that it's a pro and a con, honestly, not like being very green to this. Obviously, we have never done a film before. My husband is obviously very, very proficient in video, but we've never done a long form film. But I think that that's good in that we have been creative and learned how to problem solve in a way that a traditional filmmaker probably wouldn't. But I'd say probably our biggest hurdle, anybody's biggest hurdle in starting anything, is the funding. We have, we put a lot of our own personal investment in, and we've raised close to, I think, 25,000 we've raised total. And then we have quite a bit of our own investment that we put into the film. But honestly, I say that that's the most challenging, but 100% God has provided. Like, and it's been miraculous. And what's even crazy about the finances is, even though we've put a lot of our own finances in, like, our bank account has stayed the same. So like in our savings. So our God has definitely provided this year.
Oh, yeah.
And then we've had over 300 backers just all across the world. So we've done 2 fundraising campaigns. And our last campaign, our first campaign, it was like mostly friends and family. So we didn't have a very large audience. And then with our second campaign, our post-production campaign, you know, we had a larger audience. My group has over 500,000 people. And then we had some people on our film page. So we were substantially more settled in having like an audience. So we were asking our audience, along with our friends and family, but we had a lot of people give like $5, $10, $15. And that honestly was so impactful to me because it added up. People were saying, let's all pitch in, we can get this done together. And so like, it really has been such a group effort. I would say the second most challenging part is convincing world experts to be in a documentary with people that they've never met before. So that was challenging. But once again, like, God has 100% provided. He's opened the doors, and honestly, I've been shocked at the people that have said yes. So I would say those were the hurdles, but it obviously wasn't so bad. Like, God had it for sure.
Yeah. No, I love that. When did y'all first start? Like, when was your first fundraising campaign? How long? What's the gap between them?
Okay, so we have been all together 2.5 years.
Okay.
So, yeah, and then there's probably about a month and a half where we talked about it.
Okay.
We just kind of brainstormed, but yeah, we've been at it for 2.5 years.
Okay. Awesome. No, that's incredible to have 300. And it's like with SGF, we founded in January of 2020 and clearly had no idea what we were about to hit. And even though a big part of that entire season of life has kind of we've moved on from a lot of that, there's still been a lot of lingering. It's fundraising's been hard. So
for sure.
But it's great to have a community behind you. That's one of the greatest things about doing any kind of work where you're really serving a bigger purpose, is to see the community and just the impact that you can make together is great. So that's really, I'm so happy and proud of y'all for that.
Thank you.
Can you walk us through some of the key locations you've traveled to in order to meet with different experts and health experts to conduct interviews for the documentary?
So it all started with So we really started off with actually, we started off with Emily Snow, and she's not an expert, but she is a mom that's in our film. So she had an NBC article written about her, and her story, I brought it to Brandon, and I was like, we have to do it. Like, and we have to have her in this film. And he said, okay. We were actually at the beach at the time. And he said, okay. So I went out on the balcony, and I like cyber stalked her, found her, wrote her a message, and then she agreed. But anyway, so I had Emily, and then I asked Dr. Rebecca Bevins, and Dr. Rebecca Bevins, she has a viral TED Talk about dyes. So a lot of people in like the dyes world has known about dyes and changed their diet just because of her. So she's had such an impact in the space. And so she has connected us. She's in Arizona. So our first initial trip, Brandon and I self-funded, and we interviewed them so that we could create a fundraising video to have like a proof of concept to show people. So Emily was in Utah, and then Rebecca was in Arizona. So we did it all together. After that, we went to Washington, D.C., where CSPI, Center for Science in the Public Interest, they are a nonprofit, and they are basically our like health watchdogs. They are responsible for the added sugar label on like all of our nutrition labels. They've done so much, but that's just an example. They're an incredible resource. So we interviewed in Washington, D.C., CSPI, and then also in Virginia, we interviewed a former CSPI scientist. We went to Oklahoma to interview a mom, Kay, and then Texas. London, we interviewed the researcher responsible for the warning label in Europe. So a lot of people think that dyes are banned in Europe. They're not banned, but what has happened is it's two things. One, Europeans do not have the same palate as Americans. Like, they just don't like the sugary cereals and the Pop-Tarts and things like that as much. But they did have more dyes. Before this researcher, Dr. Jim Stevenson, he and his team conducted a study. And after they conducted that initial study, the European government said, okay, let's do more. They did a very large study. And so based on that, the EU has a warning label. So manufacturers have chosen to pull out the dyes instead of having that warning label. So anyway, we went to London, we interviewed him, which is incredible, the fact that he agreed to interview with us. He was actually very reluctant, but he's super sweet. We flew to California to interview a senator, Senator Wykowski, and then New Jersey to interview a child advocate, Ohio to interview with Dr. Joel Nigg. He's an ADHD expert and a synthetic dye expert. And then back to Utah to interview an influencer named Cara Lynn. She, her handle is Just Ingredients. She has like millions of followers. Do you know her?
Yes, I love her stuff.
Amazing. And like an even better human than you would even expect. Like,
wow.
Everybody that we've met, we've like fallen in love with, and it's felt like home to us. So other than that, other than like some of our local B-roll stuff, that's the bulk of like our interviews.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. That's a very impressive list of people and resources there. That's great.
All thanks to our backers, really, for all of our first initial fundraising efforts covered all the interviews except for the last two that I named. So thanks to them.
I remember, I think it was her one day. She posted something about Chick-fil-A on her Instagram.
I'm gonna pretend like I didn't read that.
Yeah, I was like, scroll. Don't, like, I'll pay attention to everything. Just don't come for my Chick-fil-A. Yeah, no.
She's wonderful.
Very informative. That's incredible. I love that.
Her story is amazing too.
Yes. Just from what I've learned about her on, it's just from Instagram. But there is a lot there. So what were some of the most surprising or shocking stories that discoveries that you encountered during the making of the documentary?
I mean, there's a
process. I know there's. Yeah, I was gonna say
there's a lot. Okay, so I'm gonna try to narrow it down.
Yes.
Without being too long-winded. I mean, the first initial shock, like we we really went into this kind of blind. Like when I started to do the research, I got really overwhelmed and I just quit. And then when we decided to do the film, I was like, let's not try to research, because I really want to come at this from just an average person. Like I don't want to know more than an average person would. So we went into our first interview, and the moment the interviewer talked about synthetic dyes and she described it as a chemical, I was like, wait, what? Like I never even thought about what a synthetic dye is. And so when I found out it was a chemical and that a lot of them were made as a byproduct of petroleum, I was like, that did not seem like realistic. Obviously, that was my first shock. But this next one is more shocking. So in 1990, I'm 33, so I was born in 91. So before I was born, in 1990, the FDA had decided that red 3 caused cancer. After years-long back and forth, they did some tests on animals, and they found that it caused cancer in animals, which by our standards in the U.S., if we know it's carcinogenic to animals, we are not allowed to put it in food. Like that's literally, you can find that on the FDA website. So the FDA obviously reacted in that they banned it in cosmetics. So anything that's dermally applied, cosmetics and dermally applied drugs, so blush, things like that, cannot have red 3. But it was already on the permanently approved list for food. So it was all this bureaucracy. So they said, we'll get to it, we'll get to it, we'll get to it. 34 years later, it's still in food. And listen, it's in Pediasure.
Oh, wow.
It's in, okay, Pediasure don't come for me, but it is. It's in the strawberry, it's in the chocolate. It's in lots of medications. Red 3 is not used as often as Red 40, but the fact that it is used in children's products is insane.
Yeah.
And then also the fact that, I mean, it's in so many medications, and there's a lot of children that are medically dependent. Like if you have epilepsy or if you have ADHD or whatever it is, red 3 is used in a lot of medications. So these children are taking it every single day, and we know that it is cancer causing.
Yeah.
And so we even have moms. I've had moms that have reached out to me, and it is absolutely heartbreaking, because for me in our story, we don't have to consume dyes. My child is not on any medication.
Yeah.
But a mom reached out to me, and her child is epileptic. And the issue is there's so many regulations. You can't just make a generic form of this drug. Like they have one medication, or you pay for it at a compounding pharmacy. And like it would be $1,000 more to have it compounded. And she said, we can't afford to do that without me getting a second job.
Yeah.
And so she's having, her daughter's allergic to Red 40, like hives allergy.
Wow.
And she also has a neurologic reaction. And so she's having to give her child Red 3 every single day because it's life-saving.
Yeah.
Because with severe epilepsy, so many seizures can really impact the brain. So these families are oftentimes forced to give their children something that is life-saving, but also has been known to be cancer causing. So the fact that that's legal, and the fact that the FDA, you can find that on the FDA's website, and they still haven't gotten to it, was just really eye-opening. And not that I'm a conspiracy theorist by any means. I don't think anybody's out to like kill us. It's just they're not prioritizing it. And what is approved by the FDA doesn't mean that it is necessarily safe. So we kind of have to police our own food, unfortunately, because in the US, whereas in Europe, they have more universal health care. They pay for any issues, like any therapy, any medications, whereas in the US, like I pay for my child's therapy. You know what I mean? Like we pay for our medication. So in London, it was a government funded study. They spent over $1 million on this study, whereas in the US, there's just not a whole lot of motivation to figure out like if foods or if chemicals that have already been approved are an issue today.
Yeah, it's not as much of a priority. And my brother, he has Fragile X, but he also has epilepsy. And I know for a fact that one of his medications has dye and it has Red 3 in it. And that's what my mom said. It was one of those situations where, and like you said, when they have these seizures, it just regresses. When he started them, we just kept seeing more and more regression, and he is 26 now. and cognitively probably 7 to 8-year-old. And a lot of that is due to seizures. He has to have this medication, but like you said, it's these parents are having to make this choice. It's like, I can't just not give it to my child, and you definitely can't just abruptly stop it. And
it's not your responsibility as a mom or her responsibility as a mom. It's not our responsibility to have a PhD in ingredients. Like the things that are legal to consume, we should know that they're safe, or at least that they're trying to the best of their ability to keep us safe. So the fact that they've known since 1990 it causes cancer and it's still in food, and it's still in medication, I think that's probably the most shocking thing for me.
No, that's a good point. You know, parents, it's like they have their part. They can do what they can. And nobody should have to have a PhD just to be able to take care of their child. I agree. It is very, it's very unfortunate, especially when it's families where they don't have a choice in the matter. So how do you believe To Die For can impact and educate its audience on the impacts of synthetic dyes and the importance of just being mindful of their usage? Even if you can't eliminate all of them, just be mindful of the consumption.
So we've really tried with To Die For the documentary to make it easy to understand and entertaining, and just try to get as much content in as possible with as many experts as possible. So in 90 minutes, it's a little bit less than 90 minutes, but in just shy of 90 minutes, you're going to know a whole lot about dyes, whereas it would take you a long time to search for this. So our film is science-based and story-driven, so it's half story and half like science. And there's lots of reasons why we did that. One, we enjoy stories. Like, everybody loves stories.
Relatable.
But then also, you remember stories better than you remember a fact. So if we give you facts and then we have a story that supports that, you're going to remember that. You might not exactly remember the numbers or the scientists that told you that, but you're going to consume that. So that's one way. But then also we've come across in our community, parents will be really gung-ho about removing synthetic dyes, or maybe one parent in a divorced home, and the other parent just like isn't on board. And so I think that this is a good way to easily to get the other parent to kind of look into it, or grandparents, or just like as a suggestion, as a friend. And so I think it's just a less aggressive way to go about it than like, you know what I mean? Like, you can just say, okay, look at this. Like, this is an easy way to consume this kind of information. So we're hoping that not everyone is like me and will like kind of dig into the research. And there's a lot of people that are really overwhelmed, but they might have time on the weekend to watch a film. So we're really hoping that, one, it's an easy way to digest, but also that it has like a level of interest and virality that people start to talk about it and start to have a conversation. And if people know that this is an issue, they can, one, buy foods that don't have dyes. So support the brands that are providing dye-free alternatives. And then also write your politicians and express your desire to have a warning label on these dyes, or express your desire to have a ban on dyes, or a ban on school foods, or not a ban on school foods, but dyed foods. So we're hoping that this can just be a small piece in like change in the U.S. Because there's a lot of movement going on in the U.S. There's been several states that have already, there's been California that's already banned Red 3, which is amazing. That's a really great step, because California is such a large state that it has a lot of pull. So if it's banned in California, manufacturers probably aren't going to make a version for California and a version for Georgia. So in addition to that, there are several states that have bills on the table to ban Red 3. And then also in California, they're working on banning it in school foods. So it's pretty surprising that in our school, it doesn't seem to be as much of an issue, but there are some schools, I've seen letters from like the lunchroom manager, and it's come back, and it's surprising the foods that it's in. So that definitely should not be happening when we know that it causes neurologic issues in some children. And so it may not cause neurologic issues in every child, but we know that it does in some children. So you should be protecting those children, especially the children that have the most exposure, which in the California report, the OEHA report, it's the largest peer-reviewed study in the US. It holds the most weight in the entire world. And in that report, it found that children that are of color and moms that are of color of childbearing age consume the most synthetic dyes, and also people in poverty. So we need to be protecting people that are the most vulnerable. Children with ADHD. We know there's been studies, they are more likely to be sensitive to synthetic dyes. So why are we knocking them down a few pegs when we know that we can do something that can help them? So we're hoping that this has a small part in that. And it motivates moms. Like, we're really motivated by Moms Against Drunk Driving. Like, that was just a group of moms, and they changed so much.
Yeah.
Yes. So we're hoping that we have this like parent power that we, can write our senators and make change. And senators really do listen, and they do care. We actually have a meeting with a senator in a couple of weeks. And we are proposing a ban on dyed foods in schools in Georgia. And I'm not saying it's going to happen immediately, but that's what we're working toward. And we're meeting Center for Science and the Public Interest, plus Brandon and I, like, we're meeting, and he's on board. Like, he wants to champion the bill. So, but that's just one email. And like, parents can do that. Parents can request these things. And if they're getting the senator that we interviewed in California, the way he describes it in the film is, you get one letter, he says, and I quote, "I can take a little heat, but if you get a lot of letters, they start feeling pressure to start looking into it." And the senators that are the best are going to be the ones that are listening, to their citizens. So,
well, power in numbers. And then plus, once they realize what the issue is and how many people support it and are concerned about it, that's all it is once you get someone's eyes on it, and it's like, this is a real problem.
Exactly.
This is affecting a very vulnerable, our children, So as far as school foods go, it is appalling as a parent knowing what is in these school foods. And like you said, we're not over here, they're just out to harm our kids and just out to, So, I know, like, my son, he has lunch from home. We send him lunch from home, but not every kid has that option. I know I grew up on school lunches. So, I think that's incredible. I hope that meeting goes very well. And like you said, it might not be something that happens overnight, but at least if you can get that ball rolling, it can create, a lot of momentum. So I think that's incredible. Let's see here. In what ways do you think that it can be a valuable resource for families and caregivers caring for children with disabilities and special needs? Because as you know, that is the community that SGF serves. So whenever you first told me about y'all's documentary when we last spoke, it was the year before last, that was what then hit me. And I went straight to our co-founders and was telling them about y'all's documentary. And they're like, okay, but who was it you talked to? And I was like, this is the guy that we were looking at for videographer. I was like, but just pause that and let's talk about this for a minute. Because I was like, this would just be such a great resource, because we, of course, hear that a lot. And we, each of us, either have a sibling or have worked with children with disabilities, and we've seen behaviors that sometimes are just due to the condition that they have, but can be exacerbated by foods and medications that they're consuming. And so we know that this is something we immediately were like watching for your newsletters. We're like waiting on all the progress to be made on it. This will be a great resource to share for them. So sorry, I didn't mean to drag out
thank you.
my part in that. I just wanted to express just how happy we are that we would have this kind of resource.
Cool.
I know it's talked about a lot within that community.
Thank you. Well, we thank you for your patience, first of all. It's been a long wait. But okay, so we're hoping that it will be a resource, obviously. There's several ways that we're hoping it'll be a resource. The biggest way is, I think, and we're seeing this shift locally with us, just because so many people around us have found out that their child has sensitivity. But if more people just knew that it was an issue, then those conversations that you're having with a mom, and it just comes to mind, it'll happen a lot easier. You know what I mean? Will happen more often. So more children will be helped in that way. But also in that, the more adults that know, the more caregivers that know, like, we're hoping that if they know that this could be making it worse, then obviously it will be something that comes up more often. What's crazy in our journey with our son is that we've had so many doctor's appointments, so many therapist appointments, which really didn't work for us, honestly. I mean, it was good parenting advice, but nothing really helped move the needle, honestly, for us. But none of those doctors or therapists suggested eliminating dyes. Like, it was something that I defined on my own. And I don't think that's because they were bad. I just don't think they know. And so if more people knew that this isn't like a hokey thing, like, there's 27 clinical trials on children in synthetic dyes. There's more trials, more evidence of risk than any other chemical in the market right now. So, like, there's a lot of conversation about it, and it's just not in the mainstream media. So I think if more people knew about it, more people could help. Also, our daughter does the Mother's Morning Out now that our son was kicked out of. But she hasn't been kicked out yet. No, she won't. But anyway, they have said that they feel like it'd be a really good resource to have like a DVD that they can give to parents, or just to like verbally say, hey, have you tried this? There's a documentary about it, and it has a lot of good information. So that's one way. We're also my heart is to really partner with organizations like yours in any way in any capacity that we can. But one way that we have thought that it would be really impactful is to partner with organizations and do like premieres within their organization. So you can like have a special event or something like that. But really what we're wanting is to have more awareness. Like, I think that that's going to make the biggest impact. The more people that know to be dye aware, the more people that are actually reading labels, the deeper you dig, the more frustrated you get, and the more likely you're going to write your senators, the more likely you're going to share your story and be brave. And so we really feel like, it's just kind of like the analogy where it's like a little drop in the pond that like ripples out. Like, it really does start with one person telling their story. And Rebecca Bevins, the TED Talk, the neuroscientist that did the TED Talk, it's a great example. She was very vulnerable. She put her story out there. She's had so much hate online, so much love, but also anytime you go viral, people are cruel. But she put herself out there and she was brave, but she's helped thousands and thousands of people. And so each of us has that. Each of us has a sphere of influence. So you could share on social media. You can talk to your friends and family, just being open and vulnerable, because at least for me, for a while, I didn't share our story as openly because it sounds crazy. Like the fact that our child went from, at that point, there was a teacher assigned to just him to keep him from hurting other kids, to like, he's a perfectly normal, super smart. Like when they do the MAPS testing, which is a standardized test that they do, he's on the 99th percentile in math and reading. The kid is so smart and so well behaved. He won the President's Award in class. Like, those two extremes don't seem to be real, but that is our reality. And although that's not everyone's reality, for most parents, okay, so let me back up. And we don't know exactly what's happening in the brain with dyes. There's a lot of ideas. We know that it affects neurotransmitters. We know that in London, when they did cheek swabs on the children that they did the research on, And they gave them dyes and to see which kids were reacting to dyes and which kids didn't have a neurologic reaction to dyes. They did find that there was a genetic component. So for kids like Atreyu, where just like one tiny bit can completely throw them off, there's likely a genetic component. For a lot of kids, you've got to figure out where the baseline is. And so for a child with ADHD, you're already over here into the problem area, or you're really close to the problem area. Or for a child with autism or is on the spectrum, you're really close to the problem area. Dyes is going to send you into the problem, or dyes can send you into the problem area. Whereas for many families, if you could take away the aggression, the impulsivity, the hyperactivity, if dyes are what's causing that, you remove that, then you can deal with the underlying condition. And so there's actually a mom that we've interviewed in our film, and her son does have ADHD and anxiety. And so removing dyes helped her get to the core root of what's going on with her son. So it's no longer the aggression and things like that. You remove the dyes and she could genuinely really help her son. So, and dyes aren't the only issue, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
We always suggest the Feingold Association. They've identified some more things that you can take out if dyes aren't your only issue. But we're hoping that it will at least open parents' brains to that our food can be affecting our brains and the way we think and our mood. And that to me was also very eye-opening, that something we can consume, that what we eat, ultimately impacts everything. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like you were saying, again, they're not out to harm. And I hear a lot of times, even I think the first time I had a conversation with my mom about my little brother's medicine, it's one of those, you want to think, well, if it was really as bad as you say it is, why would they have it? Like it would be banned. You want to think that. And so when they're crossing over or making that transition in the conversation, they have to go from that mindset to, it's not that they're all just out to harm your child. It's just, hey, here's these flaws in this system and this holdup. It's a matter of priority and concern and raising enough awareness around the matter to where the people that are in charge of it have no choice whatsoever to address it. So
yes, I love that. And the mindset that they're all out to get us, which, I mean, there are bad people. There are bad people in every organization. But in general, I mean, I honestly think that if people are more aware and if people were more open and talking about it more, and whenever you get into this mindset of they're out to harm us, you're kind of paralyzed. But if you know that we can make change, if we all had that mindset, we genuinely could change.
No, I completely agree. Completely agree. This is kind of, my next question kind of goes along with a lot of what we've already talked about, but what message or takeaway do you hope viewers will have after watching To Die For? And how do you think it can spark change or raise awareness on the topic of synthetic dyes?
Well, one, that dyes can cause neurologic issues in children and adults, although it hasn't been studied as much in adults. I mean, we have a lot of anecdotal evidence to suggest that adults are also impacted. And then also, it's not just those children that react. I mean, many dyes have other issues. And the fact that we've done several studies and we know that they have these certain issues associated with them that affect the general population, that doesn't mean that those are the only issues. So for instance, red 40, we know that it increases like colitis. It can cause, like, it can make IBS symptoms worse. We know that yellow 5 and 6 contains carcinogenic components. We know that yellow 5, yellow 6, and red 40 cause a lot of allergies, skin allergies, throat closing, like true traditional allergies. Red 3 and yellow 5 can be genotoxic, which means that they can damage the DNA, which can then lead to tumors, which can then lead to cancer. And also DNA damage can be passed from child to parent, from parent to child.
Yeah.
So mothers and our children that will give us grandchildren, their DNA can be damaged by what we're doing. And this is not hokey stuff. Like, this is This is science.
It is.
And so really, I mean, the biggest message, I care about children. My heart is for children. But also no one should be consuming dyes. Like, it's just not, it's not worth it. And it's not worth it, especially for our children and our most vulnerable. So just the fact that people know that dyes can cause harm is obviously our biggest message. But we also want a message of empowerment. So many documentaries, you watch health documentaries, and they're very draining. And they're like, oh my goodness, they're, toxic, cancer causing. Like, okay, I've got to throw everything out of my pantry. Like, I can't do it. But we really want to give parents like a pause and people a pause. Like, you can do it. You can do it slow. You can do it at your own pace. Just be more aware. And like, that can make all the difference. So we want to empower parents to know that, and people, just they don't have to be parents, just people in general, that you can do it. But also that we can encourage our policymakers to make change.
No, I love that. I know whenever I was pregnant, which, as we stated at the beginning of this, my son will be 13 in October. So it's been a long time since I was pregnant, but that started a lot of my, I don't want to say fear, but it started out that way, as fear of just what I was consuming. I started looking at the ingredients list of everything, and it just, for a while, it just created this state of paranoia. I'm like, everything's awful. Like, everything is awful. And I've had so many different, I've had a lot of progress in many areas, a lot along that journey. But I know, like, my son, even, he sees me in grocery stores, and I'm always looking at ingredients and the labels, and he's like, Mom, like, he'll want something, like, he'll pick up a very popular brand of cookies or something, and I'm like, I will make the cookies at home, and he's like, but these are just, I can just get it out of the cabinet, and I'll look, I'm like, well, let's see if we can find one that's an alternative. And I've even, now he's reached the point where he'll look at labels of stuff, and he's like, it'll be some really simple item, and it's like, why does it take all of this stuff to make it? I'm like, exactly. It makes no sense. So, and I've told him it's been a big, approaching it as, I didn't want him to have that fear of just, oh my God, it's everywhere. So we've just tried to make him aware and tell him, like, encourage him to kind of educate himself. Like, yes, you're going to eat things that aren't great for you. We all do, but be mindful, like, so, and I just want him to kind of carry that with him. And I'm sure, of course, that's our hope for all of our children, because we can worry about it as much as we want to, but they're growing up and they're going to have children of their own, and we need them to kind of have that same concern, I guess.
For sure. I mean, they spend most of their life as adults, so we've got to teach them, how to moderate. I mean, with dyes, it's like it's a no dyes, but with like regular food, obviously, like we try to talk about, what is going to fuel our bodies, what's going to make us strong. Like, we can have this treat. Like, we're going to have ice cream after this. We can have this treat. We know it's not going to fuel our body. But like, before that, we've had like 4 servings of fruit. We've had 2 servings of protein, So I think that it's important to teach moderation, obviously. And for parents that are struggling and like having that overwhelm about what to do, how to get started, I actually have a blog. If you subscribe to diefforthedocumentary.com, we'll give you updates, and that's the newsletter that you're talking about. But also, at the end of each newsletter, I have like a blog, and it helps parents to eliminate the dyes. And it also has a list of dyes to look for. So on the label, I think that's probably what gets a lot of people like, how do I find it? So, there are chemicals that can be hidden in our food, but synthetic dyes cannot be. So they're very, 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 very regulated by the FDA. Each batch of dyes has to be batch certified. So in that regulation, it has to be on the label. Like, it has to be clearly labeled. It'll be red 40, blue 1, yellow 5. So it's a color and a number. So you just turn it over and you look for that. But if you subscribe, I'll send you a list of dyes. And then also it has a list of foods that are surprising foods with dyes. So like vanilla icing, chocolate icing, marshmallows, fortune cookies, the things that you wouldn't expect. So I'm hoping that blog has helped a lot of people just get started. And so in that, you can take it two ways. I was desperate. We did it that moment when I decided, we just did it. And we honestly, we didn't have a whole lot. We didn't have to get rid of a whole lot. But you could also just do it slowly. Like as soon as when you get rid of something, you just find a swap that's similar. So I think that's probably my best advice, is that if your children are already, especially if they're older, luckily my oldest was 3, so he didn't know. But I just gave him, he just ate what I gave him. But if they've been set in their ways and they're older, it's obviously going to be much trickier. They have their favorite foods, and if they're dye filled, find a swap that's similar. Like there is Costco carries a lot of stuff that is dye free. I was gonna name a brand, but maybe I should.
I wish we had a Costco around us. We've got a Sam's Club in Rome, and they don't have the same kind of options as I know that Costco offers.
Also, Aldi has a lot of good, like the colorful cereals and the I already said Pop-Tarts. Colorful cereals and the Pop-Tarts. They have those swaps. Trader Joe's is completely dye free. Whole Foods obviously is dye free. There are options. I can say, like, it does sound more costly, and things like the colorful candies, that is more expensive. But with like generic medication, the generic medication is normally the one that's dye free. So like you're saving money in a lot of areas because the generic brand is the one that has no dyes oftentimes. So I do think it kind of evens out. I don't feel like we've spent a lot more, but like you can do it, and there's a good swap for everything. They were really not everything. I would say there's a good swap for 99% of things. Medications being the one thing that you can't.
You can't,
unless you're unless you have a compounding pharmacy. But with like antibiotics, for example, amoxicillin oftentimes has dyes in it, but the one that Walmart carries is dye free. So if you call around to different pharmacies, you might be able to find an option. But with the specialty drugs, they have a patent on that. So there's not going to be a generic. Oftentimes there's a patent. So for antibiotics, you can often call around and see. So
at least they've got options sometimes. And hopefully, along with everything that y'all are doing, we will reach a point to where there are way more options, or at least safer options in general.
I agree.
Sorry, can you share any behind the scenes moments or experiences that were particularly memorable or impactful for you during the production of the documentary?
I mean, there's so much. I mean, this is probably not going to be very interesting to your audience, but just like the connections we've made with these families, it's been amazing. I mean, we went to Utah for our 10-year anniversary. Brandon and I did. And so we wanted to catch up with Emily Snow, which is the person that agreed to be in our documentary to begin with. And like, we just had dinner with them, and like, it just felt like family. So my favorite part, my most memorable part, has been like just the connections that we've made. And then also, obviously, seeing the lives impacted. The film hasn't come out yet, but people are talking about it. And the more people talk about it, the more people those people help. And so it's just like, it's a ripple. So the emails, we've had so many emails in support, and then also sharing their stories. That's been super impactful. But also just how this community has like rallied together. Like our Facebook group is pretty large. We have over 500,000 people. And like, you look at the analytics, and it's 99% women of ages 24 to 48. So like we're mostly moms, not all moms.
Oh yeah.
And there are some dads in there. Obviously my husband's super like big into this, but like, we're a force. Like, we are genuinely a force. And so whenever we did that last fundraising phase, I mean, we raised right at $11,000, and like, we just rallied, and like, people gave what they could. 5, 10, 20. Like there were a lot of $5, and like that's incredible. And so just the fact that this community is like rallying together to just like get stuff done has been like so impactful for me. Brandon, I wish he was here to express his part, but maybe after the film comes out, we can give an update.
There we go. Yes, we would definitely love that. We would. So speaking of that, when and where will the documentary be released?
Okay, that's what everybody wants to know.
Everybody wants to know. So when is it coming out?
Okay, so we've been saying for a long time we're very, very close. We have been so like desperately close. But I think within the next 10 days, we're going to have a pretty finished film. I know that that's crazy, but like we have one more reenactment to film, which sounds like a lot, but it really won't be a whole lot putting it in there. So in our film, we've interviewed families, but we've done reenactments to help the story like move along and help tell the story. So we finished that up. And then obviously we didn't have a very big budget. So even though our budget, let's see, I mean, we spent over $50,000 on this film, but that's still like a micro budget. $100,000 is a micro budget. Like people spend millions on documentaries. Yes. So like, with that, we couldn't afford a composer. Wow. So Brandon is composing the music. Brandon has shot every bit of the B-roll. Like we couldn't just use random stock footage. Like we had to film it all. So like that has pushed us back a little bit. And going into this, we didn't know that. So that has obviously pushed it back. So within about 10 days, I think we will have a finished film. So right now we already have a draft to our distribution consultant and our scientific consultants, and they're looking at it. So, and we've gotten some feedback and we've kind of tweaked a couple of things, and we're at like a good place with that. After that, after we have a completely finished film, like the music is in there permanently, the B-roll is permanent. What we have to do is we have to go through and each cut, like, so every time it cuts an angle, we have to say who owns that footage. Like the person that's in it, we have to have their consent form. Like there's just a big list of stuff. Like who owns the music, who's created the music, like all of that has to be itemized and given to our lawyer. Once our lawyer looks over it, then we can have E&O insurance. And E&O insurance is what protects us from lawsuit. So we've had to create a separate LLC because this film is obviously something that manufacturers are not going to want to come out. So the chance of lawsuit is pretty high. So we've had to create an LLC so that they can sue Lord willing, they won't. Hopefully they won't. Yeah. But we haven't tried to just come after people in specific companies. Everything we've said has been factual, and we've stuck to the science, and we haven't wanted to go down a conspiracy rabbit hole. So hopefully we won't be sued at all. But if we are, they sue our LLC. Well, we have to have specific coverage, which is over $5,000 to make sure that we are protected against lawsuit. Yeah. So we have a $10,000 deductible, but then they cover everything after that. So like, obviously it's a lot of money, but after the lawyer gives us the okay, then we can start shopping at distributors. So, and distributors are the ones that are going to make the deals for us. If we feel pretty confident we're going to be on Amazon Prime, and so it'll be like you pay for the film to watch it. Like I don't know what the cost will be, but like $3.99 or something to watch it at first, and then hopefully we want to be on a streaming service. We're not going to go after Netflix like right away. That's actually one of the last things you want to do. Netflix is obviously a pipe dream, but
yeah.
But I mean, I'm not saying if Netflix offered us a contract,
it's like I'm not going to say
no. Brandon might, but he's not here to defend his opinion. But so we don't know. Honestly, we are not 100% sure how long it's going to take. But most films, they go to film festivals and things like that. We're not trying to do that. We're trying to go straight to distribution as quickly as possible. So we have 2 distributors we want to work with that we want to submit our film to. And if they accept us, then we're going to urge them to please move it as quickly as possible because we want to get this information out there. The quicker we get it out there, the more people we can help and the more people know about it, then the quicker, policy change can be made.
Of course, which it is great that you do have your blog and your newsletter and everything. So it's like in the meantime, although the documentary is not here, like here's a lot of the research behind it and a lot of helpful
Yeah.
resources. So that is great.
That's the goal.
Yes. So speaking of goals, of course, what are your goals for the documentary? Are there any? I know we've talked a lot about obviously introducing new bills and regulations. So leading to specific regulations and bills being proposed is clearly a goal. Are there any other personal or professional goals? Obviously, either from a mom perspective or just in general.
So, I mean, from like a marketing business perspective, like our KPI, our key performance indicators, is not necessarily how much money we make. Like, we are definitely not in this to make money. This is way too risky. Most documentaries don't make money at all. Like, we're not banking on getting any of the money we put back in. Obviously, we would like to. But really, our KPI is going to be like views, like number of eyes. If the larger the audience, the more likely we're going to say, yes, we definitely want to be on this streaming service, or yes, we definitely want to be here, because we want it to be easily accessible. We also, with distribution, what can happen is you can land on a distributor, and I don't think the distributors we would work with would do this, but some distributors can have relationships with certain companies or manufacturers. They'll purchase a film and they don't legally have to put it out. So they can just shelf it. And so what we want to do is we want to negotiate in that we have the right, we keep the rights to put our film out on our website. So at least we know for sure people can
access it.
Yeah. That can happen. We've heard horror stories. And like we said, like there are crooked people, and like even the senator that we interviewed, we didn't get into this a whole lot, but they have tried to like ban dyes in the US and it's not been successful. They've tried to ban 3 and it's not been successful, like at a national level. And the senator that proposed the bill in California, he proposed 2 bills to put a warning label on synthetic dyes, like they have in the EU. They both failed. One was pulled and one failed. And the second one, he said that everyone was coming into his office, manufacturers, the confectionery people, like we're coming into his office, pressuring him to take the bill down, that you're going to run us out of business. So, I mean, money, the reality is if there's any conspiracy here, it's that money rules the world. And so in that, like that's a risk with distribution too. Like we don't know who they have connections with. And so that would be a win for us to be able to put it out on our website at least. But we have really, really high hopes with these distributors. I mean, if they're in it for the right reasons, like they would not be very smart to not have this film in their repertoire, because I mean, we really have a substantial audience. People are so eager to learn about this information. It's the right time. There are bills on the table. It's in the news. And people are so interested in health and their food, and they're finally realizing, okay, everybody says, oh, well, I had it when I was growing up and I'm fine. Are you? Like, are you fine? Are we fine? I don't know. We might not be.
I know.
So people are starting, like, this is the right time. So I say all that is a little bit scary, and that's a reality of it, but we don't think that that's going to happen. So that would be success to me, to have lots of eyes on it, and then to also be able to have it on our website.
Yeah. And I hear that a lot, just in general conversation of well, I had it when I was a kid and I turned out fine, so they're fine. And like you said, it's like, but are we really? But then also there have been many instances where that has been the argument, and you can show how, even though it wasn't great when we had it as kids, because I'll be 35 in August, so I was born in 89. Even though it wasn't great when we had it as kids, there have been a lot of changes that
weren't
always for the good, that has
made many more dyes.
Way worse.
When we were kids, we did not come in contact with as many dyes as our kids do. It has gone up exponentially. And that is actually the WeHA report. That's something they pointed out, that in the FDA's original studies, they said like there's a threshold of safeness for everything. For carcinogenic chemicals, there's a threshold of safeness. But children, if they consume one product with dyes, they're way over that threshold of safety anyway. So it's not the same as when we grew up realistically. And then also, unless you have eliminated a food, you don't know how that's impacting you. So from the AWIHA report, we know that the neurologic effects that it can cause is inattentiveness, restlessness, hyperactivity, sleeplessness, irritability, and aggression. I know a lot of adults that are aggressive, irritable, have trouble sleeping, are hyperactive, that are restless. Like the reality is this could be making that worse. This could be causing it. And I know for me, I did not think dyes affected me because I've never struggled with aggression really. But I took an antibiotic. I had a sinus infection, so I took an antibiotic that was red, and I was like, I'm not going to make a big deal about it. Like, this was a couple of years ago, like when we first started the process. Didn't want to be difficult. I'll be difficult for my kid, but I didn't want to be difficult for me.
Yeah.
I had insomnia for 9 days straight, and I was like, why? And now it's the dyes. Every time if I have Red 40, that's what happens to me. So a lot of people think, okay, I have these issues, but if you think that you just have it, when in reality it could be worse by the food that you're consuming, or it could be the cause. So hopefully people will look into that more.
Awareness.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I know you had mentioned earlier talking about adults, you know, a lot of the focus is the kids and how it's affecting them. And then there hadn't been a whole lot of focus on adults, but you would imagine that they are experiencing differences. And it's like, well, even adults that want to remove refined sugars, or you pick any ingredient, you're going to notice some kind of change, whether good or bad. You're going to notice some kind of change. So removing dyes, why would the same not apply there? Because it's going to, even if it is a very small amount. I agree. Let's see here. How do you plan to continue spreading awareness and advocacy for children with sensitivities to dyes beyond the release of the documentary?
That's a good question. So in full disclosure, like I've kind of put like my personal, I mean, I work part-time, and then I have my 3-year-old part-time. But I've kind of honestly put like my career at a hold because I'm so passionate about this. So I really see myself moving into more of an advocacy role. I mean, I'm already an advocate, but like advocating for policy change, a lot of public speaking, a lot of podcasts, just like getting the information out there. So like that is personally what I'm going to take on. I'm lucky in that Brandon is the main breadwinner. So I'm fortunate enough to be able to do what I'm like super passionate about. And of course I'm still going to work. Like I have to make money, but, or I want to make money, but at the same time, like this is such a passion. Like God has given me the ability to do that. He's opened up this opportunity. So I'm hoping that, you know, so much awareness is made that I'm not going to have to do this in 5 years, you know, that we can move on and know that we have a warning label on dyes, and that, or that they're banned, the carcinogenic dyes are banned, and that it's not something we have to worry about. But until then, Brandon and I are definitely going to be doing a whole lot of advocacy work. And we're planning on our website. I'm going to create a template using the email that I sent to our senator. Senators, I sent it to a couple, and one of them, although was very kind, it was a no-go for them. So like I want to teach people on how to be advocates and how to like make change as I'm learning. And so we create templates to send to your school board, templates to send to your senators. And then obviously I want to partner with organizations like CSBI, different organizations that work with children. That's my biggest passion, and educate like their families. Just recently, I've had just the very best experience with our school board and our school nutritionist. And I can't say might not be the case with everyone.
Yeah.
I brought the dye situation up, and I asked them to add, like we were a Title I school. So Title I schools you have to, by law, the government requires you to have a nutrition policy to address like obesity and things like that. So I implored them to put something in there about synthetic dyes and to try to take dyes out of our schools, until there was a ban in Georgia. And I had the best response from them. They've worked with me hand in hand. I didn't exactly get exactly what I wanted, but we're working toward that. And so I think that if everyone took the initiative and send the email, it was just emails, and they've responded well. And I think that everyone has that power. And there's a whole lot of closed doors. I'm not mentioning all the doors that were closed, but there's if all you need is one. That's literally all you need is one. So if
the worst thing that can happen is they say no. So
exactly, yeah. So hopefully it'll hit in the right place.
No, I think the email templates, that will be, because a lot of people they realize it's an issue, but they're like, I don't even know where to begin to try to address it. I mean, yes, they want to advocate, but they can become overwhelmed very easily when it comes to that process. So even just
that was me.
Like that is great.
Yeah, and that was me, like as a parent, until we met these experts and until we really met with that child advocate. I really didn't know what to do personally to make change other than write your senators, but she really helped us like fine tune a good solid plan. And so hopefully we can share that with everyone.
I love that. Lastly, what advice or words of encouragement do you have for other parents or even filmmakers who may be considering embarking on a similar journey to raise awareness for important causes through documentary filmmaking?
All right, so filmmakers. Ooh, okay. So
buckle up and get ready.
Buckle up. No, I really like, if you are a filmmaker of faith, like you really have to be in God's favor. And like know that that's where God's wanting to take you, because none of this could happen without God. Like this should not be happening, and it is. And so I really feel like it's God using you to craft a message that He wants to be sent. But for parents, like, it is overwhelming. I've been overwhelmed, and I didn't have to eliminate that many dyes, but you can do it. Small changes lead to big rewards. So like you don't have to immediately change like all your hand soaps, just do it slow and or do it fast. If you're really desperate, do it fast. Just do whatever it takes and just start to make the change. And if you don't immediately see that your child reacts neurologically to dyes, still feel good because they're not consuming things that are harmful. And oftentimes the swaps that you make are usually kind of the healthier alternatives. So just feel good about that. But as like a mom who has like really struggled in that season, like I really empathize with anyone that is struggling with a child that has behavior problems and that is struggling to make friends. Like, it was a really dark place as a mom for me and as a human. So just giving words of encouragement in that, like, just keep doing what you're doing and obviously pray about it. And I think that it's going to work out. Like I hate hearing when parents are struggling. Like that's obviously, I'm sensitive to that, but I'm just really hoping that this hits the right people and that the right people watch this, and and the people that need to hear it, they're going to be the ones that are attuned to it. So
yeah, and that's, as you said, God has carried y'all throughout this entire journey, and that if it is, His will be done. So it will reach exactly who needs to receive it. So I think that's great. I think it's very powerful what y'all are doing. Very, very honored that we have had the chance to connect twice now and just get to learn about everything that y'all are doing, to be able to share it with the community that we serve. So very honored, very grateful. And is there anything else that you want to share with anyone? I know we have carried a lot. I am a talker, and so I know. I can make meetings last longer than they need to be sometimes, or interviews, any kind of discussion. So
I definitely think I need to take a little bit of credit for having a long meeting. So I'm a talker too. So, just like I just want to remind people that, you know, if you're wanting to try like doing Life Dye Free, you can subscribe to Die For the documentary. So it's not just To Die For, it's To Die For the documentary. And at the bottom of the page, you can see like the subscribe, and it will automatically trigger that blog and that list of dyes. And that's like a really good starting point. And you'll be on our newsletter. And every holiday season, I send like swaps. So Christmas, Easter, right now we have like popsicle swaps. So I try to like make it as easy as possible. But, and then also if you want updates about the film, we also have our teaser trailer on To Die For the documentary. So if you want to see some of the film, it's on there. I think that's it.
All right. Now the Facebook group.
Oh yeah, so that's okay. So somebody else has made a Dye Free. It's Dye Free Family.
I know I'm a member.
Dye Free Family swaps resources, swaps recipes and resources, and it'll have at the top of the page. It'll have brought to you by To Die For the documentary.
Okay. All right. Good.
Yeah. So there are several. We have 550,000 members right now. So just look for one of the. I think it's the biggest one that I know of that has Dye Free at the beginning.
I will definitely link that.
And that's a really good place to, like, if parents or just anyone is struggling with, like, you've gone through your pantry and you have this stack of things that have dyes. Like, where do I find dye-free swaps? You can say, I go to Walmart and I need some swaps for these, or I go to Aldi. These are the stores I shop at. Are there any swaps? And like, these women are so eager to help. I'm telling you, they will help you. So that's also a really great resource, obviously.
I love that. Hey, community is powerful.
Yeah, for sure.
Community is a huge part of everything we do at SGF. So that's anytime that gets brought in to conversation anywhere, we can't express our gratitude enough for just how powerful our community has been. And so when we see that in other places, it's great. People do have a lot more power and ability to have an impact than they realize. So
yeah,
that's great. Well, Whitney, it has been the greatest pleasure. I truly appreciate everything. Well, I'm so excited to be able to share our interview with our community and our team. I know everybody's been kind of waiting to hear because of course, I've kept up with what updates have been available through your emails and blogs. So that's been great. Honored to share it with everybody, and we look forward to the updates on y'all's release. I know that is going to be a very long out process.
Hopefully it'll be fast.
Praying for you guys.
Thank you. We need it.
Because it's like wrapping everything up with just the film is not where the road ends. It's a whole new journey. So
for sure.
We will definitely be praying for you guys as you embark on that. So
thank you.
Goes well. And whenever these email templates and everything are up, like we will definitely, we would love to continue to share all of this with our community as well, just so we can get as many eyes on this as possible, so that those that are overwhelmed, it's, hey, here's a really great place to start. So
yeah, our documentary Facebook page is also a great place for resources too. I mean, I kind of share them, but they're a little bit more muddled on the group. You can find it a little bit easier on our
more accessible.
To Die For the documentary Facebook page.
Okay. All right. We will definitely link all of this for everybody. All right. Well, thank you so much. And until next time, I hope you have a lovely evening. It looks like it's a pretty day outside.
Thank you. Well, you too. It was great to talk to you and connect again.
Yes, of course. I look forward to continuing to collaborate and partner with you guys, just to kind of any place where we can plug ourselves in to help y'all. And then, of course, like I said, get everything that y'all are doing out to our audience. So it would be great.
Love it. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.